Hello everyone, I should be streaming. Let me just check that my connection is live and I will begin. And yes, I'm here. Right. I know, once again, this is one of those ad hoc, off the cuff, suddenly announced streams. After my last talk on Hitler and Hitler's religion, his connection to Christianity, his connection to the Catholic Church, I received some interesting comments in the chat. And of course, there were those who were insistent that the Catholic Church is evil, the Catholic Church is the Antichrist, and there were a couple of references to Pope Pius XII being Hitler's Pope. So I felt that I needed to address that even further than I had during this stream. So let me get stuck into that. Adele Cole, welcome. Dragon, welcome. Yeah, so apologies if I'm doing another one of these ad hoc, off the cuffs, all of a sudden streams, but it's just something that really, sometimes the claims that I read upset me, they affect me, they bother me, and I feel that I really have to address them, so I have to go dig deeper into a subject that I had touched on in my previous discussion on Hitler. Hello, Chloe. Welcome, thank you. God bless you too. Everyone, thank you. All right, let me just dive into this. So, I'm Julie. Good evening from Kuwait. I've been to Kuwait, I think twice. Yeah, it was 55 degrees there. That's last I recall the Capricorn. Well, hello there. Welcome. Hello and God bless. Yeah, thank you all for being here. So let me dive into this. So this is a response to people telling me about Hitler's Pope. This is part of what I covered on Monday, but I'm going to go into more depth on this discussion, and I will do this again tomorrow. Right? But I just felt that I want to break it out separately. Let me dive in. Actually, before I dive in, let me go here. I'm going to go through a number of newspaper articles. Or let's, oh my gosh, Roman, thank you very, very much. Thank you. I'm really grateful. Eric, and welcome, Sky Apologetics. Shalom. Right, I want to introduce you to one of the most important, or if not perhaps the most important, Soviet Union defector to the West. The man is called Ion Mihai Pacepa, and he is a key Cold War defector. He died 4 years ago. A general in the Romanian intelligence service, he later revealed the corruption and cruelty behind his country's communist regime. Right, this is Ion Mihai Pacepa, top Romanian intelligence official. There's a couple of words about him. Lieutenant General Ion Mihai Pacepa, senior Romanian intelligence official and advisor to the country's president, Nicolae Ceausescu. He was one of the highest-ranking officials to flee the Soviet bloc during the Cold War. Mr. Ceausescu offered $2 million reward for his death and reportedly hired Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, a Venezuelan terrorist known as Carlos the Jackal, to find him and kill him. His servant, welcome. So he's been living under an assumed name for a long time. Mr. Pacepa was among the first to talk about the communist strategy of manipulating information to sow dissent and tension amongst the Soviet bloc enemies. He came with a complete blueprint for what the Romanians and therefore the Russians were trying to do to us, said Michael A. Ledeen, a scholar at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a conservative think tank and former consultant to the National Security Council. All right, fine. We will go to the next one. That's the New York Times. Ion Mihai Pacepa, highest-ranking Soviet bloc defector to the West. Ion Mihai Pacepa, top Romanian intelligence officer, who became the highest-ranking defector from the Soviet bloc when he fled Romania and sought asylum in the United States. Ronald Richlak, Pacepa's co-author of a 2013 book about disinformation during the Soviet era, spoke about his death. Okay, so this is someone that's very important, and that's a second name that is very important. We need to know about this man. This is the National Catholic Register. There were many, many sources. I just picked 3. Claims that Pius XII was framed is gaining support, part 2. Former Romanian spy chief discusses how the myth of Hitler's Pope started with Stalin. Former head of the Romanian intelligence service, Ion Mihai Pacepa, discussed with the Register how the Soviets framed Pope Pius XII as an anti-Semitic Nazi sympathizer. Efforts to muddy Pius's reputation began in Moscow in a bid to discredit the Catholic Church in the Ukraine very soon after World War II. During the Cold War, that campaign of disinformation became known as Operation Seat 12. Eric Braun, welcome. 1278, BFA. Interesting. Hitler's the only one to have an army of Protestant theologians working for him, but somehow it's the fault of the Vatican for this. And that is the truth. Hitler had an army of Protestant theologians working for him to rewrite the New Testament, to create new theology. And yes, that is actually the truth. Let's continue. Operation Seat 12. He defected to the US in 1978, right? Very, very highly placed, highly ranked intelligence operative. He caused major issues for the Soviets and Ceausescu when he defected. The play, he asserts that Rudolf Hochhuth's 1963 play, The Deputy, was used by the Soviet intelligence services as part of a wider plot to frame Pius XII. Pacepa is writing a book on the Soviet plot called Disinformation. He is collaborating on the work with the University of Mississippi professor Ronald Richlak, who doubted Pacepa at first, but after spending 2 years investigating his story, became convinced of its truth. Okay, that's enough of that. Let's jump into the rest of this. I've got 13 slides, and yes, Erkin, Hitler's Sheikh. In fact, we should also talk about Hitler's reformer, right? So, slandering the Pope, right? This guy's important here, and let's start. I'll go back to Mit brennende Sorge, with burning concern or with burning anxiety. Thunderous, welcome. Hi, this is... Right. So, this encyclical was written in German, specifically for Germans. Typically, it is written in Latin. It was written by Pope Pius XII to the German bishops in 1937, expressing his concerns about the Nazi regime's treatment of the Catholic Church in Germany. It emphasizes the importance of upholding religious duty, education, and defending the truth and maintaining faith in God during times of persecution. He urged the faithful to show heroism. Hey, Thunderous, good to see you, man. We need to chat. Let's talk tomorrow. Right. Now, the Pope stresses that faith in the... Well, okay, fine. I've read this before. I've seen this yesterday. You can read this when you're free, okay? But he advised Catholic parents to sever all of their ties with the Nazi regime where they could. You must understand he was well aware of repercussions, reprisals by the Nazis, by Hitler. So he had to be very careful what he said, because people were literally killed because the Catholic Church resisted. So Hitler was infuriated by the fact that also the Allies, they were providing all of this information to the Germans, right? They needed to spread this information. This was spread into Germany, and this caused massive backlash. Hitler was extremely upset. It caused intensified Nazi persecution of the Catholic Church. Knight of Christ, welcome. There was retribution. So 12 printing presses were seized. Hundreds of people, Catholics, were sent to prison or the concentration camp. That ended up being thousands. Thunderous says, loving this material. This is why Lloyd is unique. He covers all the bases with Islam. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. In his diary, Goebbels wrote that there were heightened verbal attacks on the clergy from Hitler, and he wrote that Hitler had approved the start of trumped-up immorality trials against the clergy and an anti-church propaganda campaign. Goebbels' orchestrated attack included a staged morality trial of 37 Franciscans. On the church question, wrote Goebbels, after the war, it has to be generally solved. There is, namely, an insoluble opposition between the Christian and a heroic German worldview. Now, what they mean by the Hegelian heroic German worldview is that the heroic man stands above conventional morality. He's not tied to biblical morality. He's not responsible to God, to anyone. He can do as he pleases. This is literally the satanic view of the world. Do what thou wilt is the whole of the law. He stands above the law. He stands above human morality. Understand, this is also very much the atheist view, the materialist view. Let's continue. William Shirer says, the Concordat was hardly put to paper before it was being broken by the Nazi government. On 25 July, the Nazis promulgated their sterilization law, an offensive policy in the eyes of the Catholic Church. 5 days later, they moved to dissolve the Catholic Youth League. Clergy, nuns, and lay leaders were targeted, leading to thousands of arrests over the ensuing years, often on trumped-up charges of currency smuggling or quote-unquote immorality. So this is the lie that secularists keep on bringing up. Yes. Right. Now, what you have here, this is Dachau. There was a special division for ministers of the church, 90% of whom roughly were Catholics. And this is then being liberated. In the face of this persecution, Pope Pius XI issued his, or 12th, could have made a typo, issued his Mit brennende Sorge encyclical, which denounced the pagan ideology of Nazism. In response, Hundreds more clergy were arrested and sent to the concentration camps. Catholic schools, the Catholic press, trade unions, political parties, and youth leagues were eradicated. Anti-Catholic propaganda and morality trials were staged. Monasteries and convents were targeted for expropriation or theft to be taken from them. Prominent Catholic lay leaders were murdered, and thousands of Catholic activists were arrested. All in all, an estimated 1/3 of German priests faced some form of reprisal in Nazi Germany. 400 German priests were sent to the dedicated priest barracks of Dachau concentration camp. Of 2,720 clergy imprisoned at Dachau from Germany and occupied territories, 2,579 or 95% were Catholic. Now, I've looked at this number, I've dug for this number, and that's the number that seems to be everywhere. I don't know if everyone seems to be sharing the same source. I'm not sure exactly what that source is. This is the number I keep coming up with. Now, I will be looking back at this, trying to find more detailed information, but this seems to be the number that everyone goes to. Polish prisoners in Dachau toast their liberation from the camp. That's the photo in the back. Poles constituted the largest ethnic group in the camp and the largest proportion of those imprisoned in the priest barracks of Dachau. Now, word for word, this is from the New York Times again, and this is a leftist publication, as we all know. The Case Against the Nazis, How Hitler's Forces Planned to Destroy German Christianity by Joe Sharkey. According to Baldur von Schirach, the Nazi leader of the German Youth Corps that would later be known as the Hitler Youth, the destruction of Christianity was explicitly recognized as a purpose of the National Socialist movement. From the beginning, though, considerations of expedience made it impossible for the Nazis to adopt this radical stance officially until it had consolidated power, the outline says. No, we're not talking about Hans Gunther, dashing rogue, but welcome. In the dead era, the Lutherans were mainly Stasi agents snitching on the underground Christian movement, wondering what's up with Protestants and the will to bend to really please their conception. Interesting. My dad, who went to St. John the Divine, was a powerful a year during World War II. Wow. Interesting. In Stalag 25. Very interesting. Wow. I went to one Nazi torture prison. There's a prison here where people were taken and tortured for information, and it was a horrific experience. I left there. I had to go take a walk. It was freezing outside. I took a walk in a park across the street. It was just mind-numbing. And this I did to Poles. It was horrific. Small place, just Poles went there, and it was insane. I didn't get a notification. It's very unsettling. Either way, this is the stuff, Lloyd. You're a bastion of triumph in God's name. Thank you, James Alexander. Let's continue. I have shown you this before. Protestant support for the Nazis. This is all the Protestants who voted for the Nazis. These are all the Catholics. You'll notice the white areas did not vote for the Nazis, did not vote for Hitler. Notice the Catholics did not vote for Hitler. Notice this here. You'll see this. This voting pattern is very, very clear. The Catholics rejected him. Therefore, Hitler had a special place in his heart for Catholics because he hated them. Right, now, but they collaborated, the common claim. Right, in 1933, the Catholic Church signed the Concordat with the Reich government to secure the freedom of the Church's mission and protect the faithful from potential trials and difficulties. The Catholic Church is not a government. The Catholic Church has connections to all sorts of governments. It has to. It is not trying to do trade. The Pope is not a general. He does not have an army. If you want to serve your flock in foreign countries, you're going to have to try and keep on nice terms, even with the worst of governments, be it communist Russia, be it North Korea. You have to, because you want to try and get your priests in there because you want to try and keep the church alive. One wrong move, and you know the church is already persecuted. One wrong word, and of course those people can turn on the church, kill people, disappear people, blow up churches. This happens. The Pope has to be extremely careful. The church has to take extreme care when dealing with these crazy maniacs. Despite the church's efforts to warn Germany's rulers of the consequences of supporting the policies, the Nazis disregarded the Concordat. We know this. Many have accused the Catholic Church of collaborating with the Nazis during this time, right? The church was mindful of potential consequences of taking drastic action and sought to avoid any actions that would bring harm. Remember, mit brennender Sorge led to the arrests and deaths of thousands of people. So they have to think the next step that we take can lead to the death of thousands, tens of thousands more. I'll continue. This is the book called The Myth of Hitler's Pope, How Pius XII Rescued Jews from the Nazis. So the main claim is that he didn't care about the Jews. He let the Jews die. He did nothing. He rescued about 800,000 Jews. Now, this is a book by Rabbi David G. Dalin. Or Dalin, this is the rabbi here. Rabbi David G. Dalin's book debunks the myth that Pope Pius XII was in league with Hitler during the Holocaust. The Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Hitler's Mufti, Hitler's Sheikh, Hitler's Imam, Hitler's Muslim, if you will, Hajj Amin al-Husseini was Hitler's general. He supported the SS. He raised an SS division. They had a Muslim division in the SS. And he promoted, promoter, of the Holocaust. While Pope Pius XII worked to save Jews from Nazis, the Grand Mufti called for their extermination. James Alexander, by the way, I only made a notification like 5 minutes before I decided to do this. The book provides the true history of the Catholic Church's efforts to save Jewish lives during the Holocaust and the Nazi plan to kidnap the Pope. Dalin exposes the agenda of the mythmakers who used the Holocaust to attack the papacy and Christianity. If you can undermine the Catholic Church, you will undermine all of Christianity. Every time I speak with Protestants and I say, okay, so Luther did some nasty things. He led to the death of thousands, millions perhaps. And he says, well, who's going to apologize? Who's going to apologize? Because, the Catholic Church is one big unified church, whereas you've got the Protestant churches. There's like, this church has 5 people, this church has 12, that one has 20, this one has 3. We're not unified. Who's going to make the apology? Who speaks on whose behalf? Yes, exactly. Do you see the problem here? This is why they have to undermine the Catholic Church. It's one big target painted on its back. Netanyahu said once that it's the fault of the Muslims. In fact, he mentioned the Grand Mufti, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, and no one believed him. But yes, but it's true. Hello, mods and friends. Hello, Marlene. Welcome. Let me just go here and... Okay, let me just go back to where I was. Right. So this is a Jew, a rabbi, that is protecting the Pope here, that is defending the Pope and his reputation. Okay? So the book is full of shocking and irrefutable details, including the fact that Pope Pius XII deserves to be called a righteous Gentile for his efforts to save Jews. It's a must-read for anyone who wants to learn the truth about the Holocaust and its impact on our culture wars today. Let me continue. Hitler's Mufti and Hitler's reformer, a guy called Luther. You may have heard of him. He's got nothing to do with Protestantism, by the way. During Pope Pius XII's lifetime, and immediately after his death, secular publications like the New York Times, Jewish groups, and luminaries from Golda Meir, the former president of Israel, to Albert Einstein and the Nazis themselves all assessed Pius as an enemy of Nazism and a friend to Jews. The author proves that Pius' silence in the Holocaust saved more lives than speaking out against Hitler. Pius' silence created networks in the church that became an underground railroad for saving the lives of Jews and other persecuted people. The book explains the situations of the time in which Pope Pius XII had to act. Should the church have excommunicated Hitler? That's a question. Dalin provides several historical examples of popes excommunicating politicians and those actions backfiring. Mit brennende Sorge backfired heavily. Thousands died and went to prison. That he has on page 77 to page 80 on the book. Historians are still debating whether the Allies should have bombed the railroads to the concentration camps. No one can say whether it would have done any good or not. Pius could not foresee Nazi policy nor how his actions would play out. He worked behind the scenes, he measured his every word and act against Nazi retaliation. Today it is estimated that Pius's diplomatic efforts saved the lives of approximately 800,000 Jews. Oh, by the way, there's a book by a guy called... He founded Christianity in 1537. He's the creator of Christianity. Martin Luther, Dr. Martin Luther created Christianity. But yeah, I forgot his name. It's called The Jews and Their Lies. In 1543, Martin Luther wrote a 65,000-word book on the Jews and their lies to demonize the Jews and called for violence against the Jewish people who brought forth our Savior, Jesus Christ. The Jews and Their Lies by Dr. Martin Luther. Every anti-Jewish book printed in Hitler's Third Reich contained references to and quotations from Martin Luther. Now on Sunday or Monday when I did the last stream, I covered some of this. I showed some of this material. Thank you very much, Erkin. You say here maybe the reason they didn't excommunicate him was that they considered him self-apostated to use acts. Look, that is true, clearly, but if they had to take an aggressive act against him, he would take an action against the church. Just sending out and printing Met brennende Zwager had caused massive retaliation and repercussion. Already they were being persecuted. This was like throwing a match into a gas engine. I mean, you're just going to blow up the car in that case. Beating tracks out of Babylon. Hey, man, how is that going? How's it going? Did you first make these connections all by yourself? Did God give this? Did you draw from anyone else to study? Do you want me to butter you up? Do you want me to butter you up? Of course I stole from your awesome work in the past, man. Thank you very much. No, some of this stuff I put together myself, but your stuff on some of the other work, definitely. I mean, that was very enlightening. Subottendorf, you definitely opened a few doors for me there, man. Okay, and Pius also in contact with the Christians who want to assassinate Hitler. Okay, I was not aware of that. So, slandering the Pope. Let's have a look at this guy. Yep, this fun-looking guy right here. The myth of being Hitler's Pope started with a play by a former Hitler Youth member in 1963 called The Deputy. Former Hitler Youth member. Vilification began as easily dismissed communist agitprop against the strongly anti-communist pontiff. The campaign became a major issue with the Berlin premiere of the play in 1963, which then moved to New York in 1964. Can I paste links into the chat? You should be able to, Marcus. Written by this man, Rolf Hochhuth. Right, that's the guy in the background there, Rolf Hochhuth. Hochhuth drew on communist propaganda to write the play, The Deputy, which was published as a book. In the book, he also adds an appendix, and the appendix has like historical information, historical background. It's all complete fiction, but it's a fictional book, entirely fictional, but it's sold as actual history. Well done and keep on marching. Thanks, man, beating tracks. So, the Deputy accused the Pope of silence and inaction in helping Jews. This started the decline in Pius's reputation. Hochhuth vilified Eugenio Pacelli, who was Pope Pius XII in 1939, as a Nazi collaborator, an icy and avaricious pontiff guilty of moral cowardice and inexcusable silence as Europe's Jews were murdered by the Nazis. That's the picture that he painted. Just continue here. I know this was last minute that I was out. I just came home and thought, what the heck? I wasn't sure I was going to do this tonight. So I just thought, okay, right, that's a little bit about that. Now, Protestants love communist propaganda because, quite honestly, I keep hearing so many nasty, slanderous statements from Protestants. Now, for those who haven't heard me say this, for the 1 billionth time, I was raised as a Protestant. I still am a Protestant. I am not a Catholic. Right? So I apparently I need to repeat this 15 times per show, every show, but fine. Cold War communists sought to discredit the Vatican's moral authority with a disinformation campaign called Operation Seat 12 because of its outspoken anti-communism. Unearthed in 2007 by Ion Mihai Pacepa, Romanian Secret Service general who defected, the plot involved fabricating a play portraying Pope Pius XII as a Nazi sympathizer. So the fact that the Vatican, fake human says, the fact that the Vatican is concluding a treaty with the new Germany means the acknowledgement of the National Socialist state by the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is not a political organization, fake human. The Catholic Church is interested in being wherever they are Christians. It is interested in making converts. It has to be on good terms with everybody. It wants to do outreach with everyone. It needs to be in contact. Everywhere there's evil, that's where the church has to go. Doctors don't hang around healthy people. Doctors go where the sick people are. Now, if you're trying to make a statement, if you're trying to imply something, please say so. Please let me know if you're trying to imply something that I am not understanding. Authorized by Nikita Khrushchev in 1960, the operation aimed to weaken the Vatican's anti-communist influence. General Ivan Agayans, head of the KGB's disinformation department, crafted the outline and false research for the play, The Deputy, while devoted communist and producer Erwin Piscator brought it to life on stage. Posing as priests seeking to re-establish diplomatic relations between Romania and the Holy See, spies infiltrated the Vatican archives. Despite finding no incriminating evidence against Pius, Agayans used the stolen documents to bolster the play's credibility. Ronald Richlak revealed that many of those involved in the play's production and promotion had strong ties to communist or leftist causes. Right? Adding to the intrigue, declassified British intelligence from 1969 speculates that Rolf Hochhuth, the purported author of the deputy, might have been an intellectual agent working for the East Germans or the Soviets. Historians Michael F. Feldkamp and Michael Burley, I've used Michael Burley's work before on my discussions on atheism on the French Revolution, very good historian, supports Pacepa's account, asserting that Operation C12 fits into a larger pattern of communist efforts to discredit the Catholic Church and its leaders. Richlak states that the American producer of C12's play was also a communist. Big-time communist. When you read, I can't do all of it here, that would take too long, but man, I will do a longer show on this in the future. A declassified British intelligence memorandum dated January 10, 1969 surmises that Hochhuth may have played a knowing role in spreading communist propaganda. We've got multiple sources corroborating these points. Now, Michael Burley states Soviet attempts to smear Pius had actually commenced as soon as the Red Army crossed into Catholic Poland. The Soviets hired a militantly anti-religious propagandist, a man called Mikhail Markovich Scheinman. Hochhuth's play drew heavily upon Scheinman's lies and falsehoods. Hochhuth's soldiers. Now, Hochhuth not only tried to smear successfully Pope Pius XII and the Catholic Church, he also set out then, he wrote another play which was intended to smear the image of Winston Churchill. He then wrote another play called Soldiers, Soldaten, in 1967, which attempted to destroy the reputation of Sir Winston Churchill. In both cases, Hochhuth rewrote the history of World War II in a heavily biased but dramatically effective way, causing deep offense and enduring controversy. Hochhuth relied on David Irving. David Irving is a convicted Holocaust denier. He was convicted as well of falsifying history, falsifying information, for his claim that the British Prime Minister not only deliberately targeted German civilians in an area bombing by the RAF, but ordered the assassination of General Sikorski, the exiled Polish leader who died in a plane crash. Yeah, lots of Polish leaders dying in plane crashes. The play peddled the canard that Churchill was prepared to go to any lengths to appease Stalin, even the elimination of the anti-communist Sikorski. Under English defamation law, I didn't finish this, I was still busy on the slide, but fine, it's just a bit raw. So, under English defamation law, you've got to prove your case, right? You've got to prove that you have a case to present, right? So, what happens is, they showed that he had deliberately distorted historical evidence, and the evidence against him was shown to be substantially true. So, English libel law puts the burden of proof on the defense, meaning it was up to Lipstadt, right, and her publisher to prove that her claims of Irving's deliberate misrepresentation were true, and they proved it successfully. Irving even used forged documents and systematically distorted history. In fact, he used a source that was known to be fraudulent. He used a known source that was very, very questionable. So, Lloyd, when will we cover the Spanish Revolution? These also commies keep, I don't know, it's got to do with, I tend to do things related to Christianity, and all of this is in one way connected or another. I thought the Soviet infiltration of the Vatican was well known. Not that well known. So, alright, so now I know I write very, very blunt and maybe controversial headlines, but just admit you want to hate Catholics. Because man, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. So, this is the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra that, after the war, specifically requested that they come and play for Pope Pius to thank him personally for everything he did during the war to save Jews. Why would they do this if the man was an anti-Semite who did nothing at all? So fiction became reality, and reality, unfortunately, is struggling against the fiction. Robert Ventresca, professor, University of Western Ontario, Pius XII chose instead to avoid a public confrontation with the Hitler regime, counting instead on less obvious but practical activity on the part of his representatives and Catholic clergy, and lay people on the ground. It is entirely legitimate to question the efficacy or wisdom of his approach. Sure, could he have done something else? He could have ordered his army of Jesuits with their secret spy weapons to go and shoot Hitler, whatever. I mean, fine, maybe you would have gone in there Rambo style, but the Pope is not a general. He doesn't have an army. But there is very strong evidence to support the view that his public restraint and diplomatic caution saved lives and thwarted some fundamental Nazi objectives. James Alexander says, my youth, I had all these choice words to say about the church, and turns out I was fed well-written and calibrated lies. Yes, you were. So we all were. Esteemed British historian Sir Martin Gilbert believes Pius saved hundreds of thousands of lives by whispering rather than shouting. When Pius died in 1958, Golda Meir, former Israeli Prime Minister, said, when fearful martyrdom came to our people, the voice of the Pope was raised for its victims. The life of our times was enriched by a voice speaking out about great moral truths above the tumult of daily conflict. That is actually true. Martin Luther did urge the Germans to not fight back against the Ottomans during the Siege of Vienna. A real soldier of Christ. He was about to bend over and hope they used Vaseline. That was Martin Luther. Yeah, great soldier for Christ. Fantastic. So Martin argued that not only did Pius speak out, but the Nazis accused him of being the mouthpiece of the Jewish war criminals. He points to the Pope personally saving 3/4 of Rome's Jews when deportation started after the German occupation. Historian and Rabbi David Dalen notes that Pius's first encyclical was against Nazi racism. So the very first encyclical of this Pope was against Nazi racism. The Allies dropped 88,000 copies of it over Germany. Marlene Stewart says, James Alexander, I think a lot of us are grappling with what we've always believed and why compared to what we're seeing unfold in front of us now. Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, sometimes these things are just burning inside me. I just want to get them out and talk about them. James says, I was baptized in the Roman Catholic Church when I was a child. I've been a Catholic again for the past 4 years now. Okay. Right, guys. So look, if you do like what I'm doing, if you like this content, please tell people about it, learn it, share it, like, and if you don't, if you haven't, please subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Please add your comments below. I learn a lot from my audience. You guys tell me things that I missed. You provide details, books, references. I mean, I get gold from the audience as well. Right, let me continue. This is from the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, newspaper established in 1917. Tells us the Israeli orchestra plays for Pope Pius XII in historic concert. This is dated May 27, 1955. At 10 a.m. today, the Israeli Philharmonic Orchestra gave a private concert for Pope Pius in the Vatican's Consistory Hall. This was the first time that any orchestra from abroad had played privately for Pope Pius, and only one Italian orchestra, that of Turin, had previously performed for him. Conductor Paul Kletsky had requested that on the Israel Orchestra's first tour of Italy, it be allowed to perform for the Pope as a gesture of gratitude for the help which the Roman Catholic Church gave to all persons persecuted by the Nazis and the fascists. The Vatican accepted promptly. Why would they be thanking this man if he was their enemy? Understand? There's a disconnect here. This is the book that, again, later in history, after the play, this book created additional controversy and started to further create this idea in people's minds, this false idea in people's mind that he was Hitler's Pope. And this picture, notice here, notice these uniforms. If you look closely, these are not Nazi uniforms. You need to look very closely. These are not Nazi uniforms. The picture is chosen to imply that he had just gone to visit Hitler. That is why the picture needed to be selected like this. This picture was not taken during the time of Hitler. This was taken long before Hitler was in charge. Luther realized too late the jar was Vicks, not Vaseline. Good grief, yeah. Okay, so Hitler's Pope, the secret history of Pope Pius XII, John Cornwell. I've been reading through works that are debunking and discussing Cornwell's work, and let's say his work is sloppy. Let's just call it that. Cornwell is accused of making unsubstantiated claims and ignoring positive evidence. The author moderated some of his allegations since the publication of the book. He had to say it's nice things. Now, he's been flip-flopping, but whatever. I mean, in other words, he's saying, well, yeah, I was wrong, but I'm still right. You know, the Pope wasn't, but he was. In 2004, Cornwell stated that Pius XII had so little scope of action that it is impossible to judge his motives for his silence during the war, while Rome was under the heel of Mussolini and later occupied by Germany. So understand, you had one dictator in control of Rome that could have wiped out people and another in Germany. Now, here's a question, right? If you're 5 years old and your parents are both mass murderers and like to slap you around, what are you going to do? What can you do? How much power do you have? Do you understand? So, yeah, just ponder that. Right. All these plays sound pretty close to French Revolution propaganda. Yeah, might be. Yeah. Let's continue. Cornwell stated in 2008 that Pope Pius XII's scope for action was severely limited. Right? He admits the Pope. What could the Pope do? The guy couldn't come in guns blazing. That wasn't an option. When Pius XII died in 1958, there were tributes from virtually every Jewish group around the world. It is alleged that Cornwell manipulated the photograph on the front cover of the American edition of the book and incorrectly dated the photo to March 1939, which is the month that Pacelli was made Pope. Okay? Richlak charged that this is the other historian who wrote some very, very detailed refutations on this topic. This had been done deliberately to give the impression that Pius had just visited Hitler, when in fact the photo had been taken in 1927. See that uniform? That's not a Nazi uniform. See that soldier that was there? Those are not Nazi uniforms. So this was taken in 1927 as Pius was leaving a reception held for German President Paul von Hindenburg. 1278 says, I'm Romanian and read about Pacepa's involvement when it comes to creating Palestinian lie with the help of the Soviets, including lying about Arafat's identity. Yes, I've covered that before. I've actually spoken about that in some detail previously on my channel and other shows. Look at my stuff on Palestine. Dag sê dat doen ze al gaan met jou. My gaan baie goed, dankie. All right, let me continue. Author Robert Royal, who's also written on this topic, has also repeated the allegation against Cornwell. So Cornwell's work is shoddy, quite bluntly, and that's it. So, yeah, let me go back here. So guys, understand, much of the time, the work that I do is because someone says something incredibly stupid or incredibly dishonest or obvious propaganda, right? And then I'm like, okay, fine, I'm going to have to do something to deal with this in detail. Because so often someone will say, oh, the Pope was actually a Martian. And I'm saying, okay, the evidence. Like, there's an idiot on another channel who's told me bluntly, oh, Catholics were not the first Christians. The Essenes were the first Christians. So I said, okay. So I went and found a whole bunch of references to the Essenes being from the 2nd century BC, as early as that and so on, and how they came long before Jesus was born. And I'm like, okay, these were Jews, right? These were Jews 200 years before Jesus. Please explain how they were Christians before Christ was born. Please prove me how they were Christians. I'm still waiting for answers. I'm getting, oh well, Lloyd, you know, you just don't like, you hate God because you won't listen to me, and John 14 verse 7 says that you're going to burn in hell. Like, just show me what is the evidence that the Essenes were Christians. Yeah, but do you know that the Pope is actually a Martian from the planet Blogrok, and he actually has green skin and he's a lizard? What is the evidence that the Essenes were Christians? Lloyd, do you know that the Jesuits are actually trained killers and assassins, and they feed poison to people and then they kill them by having fires, and they don't let people have marshmallows, and it's cruel and vicious? I'm still waiting for the evidence. Understand, they will lie to me. They will make stupid statements, and they will absolutely not defend. I will hear all sorts of garbage. Understand, now, these people, you can give them as much. Proof in this case is not persuasion. You can give them as much evidence as you have. They are not interested in truth. They're interested in lying. They like the lies. Understand, I'm not interested in dialogue, right? We've tried dialogue, and what's happened is we now have naked men in the street dancing and twerking in front of 3-year-olds. You have people trying to normalize what's called a map, which is you have pedophiles, right? We all know what a pedophile is. Now you've got MAPS, which is a more descriptive term, which means minor attracted pedophile. And you've got men who can fall pregnant. You see, that's what happened with dialogue. These people are not interested in dialogue. They are interested in destroying you. They want to win. Are you interested in winning? You need to beat them over the head with the facts. Understand, you need to understand that you need to win here. There is no second place. So let me continue. I came back to my faith in 16, slowly and surely, but the movement, looking at the history of the church and the church's teachings, it was obvious to return to the church. That's a very interesting story, James. Interesting. Ancient aliens, time traveler. Yep, it's obvious Martin Luther was the first black Christian Hebrew Israelite. You're just racist, Lloyd. Repent like a tough Oh man, you got me. Sorry about... Yeah, dude, yeah. Yusuf Estes is a Muslim. I've met Yusuf Estes. No, I didn't meet him personally, but I've been at an event where he was at in Dubai. Who claimed that the Catholic Church was founded by Alexander the Great 300 years. I know. So guys, thank you. If you like this material, please like it, share it, talk about it, provide comments, let people know. Lots of buffering. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, look, it happens, right? YouTube has an issue with certain channels on occasion. So guys, I hope you learned something. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was useful. There is a wealth of material. I had to cut this down to a handful of slides, or I would be a whole night talking about this. There is far more material. There's far more history on this. It's not a minor attracted person, Thunders. It's a minor attracted pedophile. All right? You have pedophiles, but now it's been renamed for the 2020s. It's minor attracted pedophile. I guess YouTube is squeezing the bandwidth because Lloyd says stuff they don't like. Yes. Heavy storms in the southeast causing some of the buffering. That could well be. In fact, there's storms here. When we have rain here, there's rain here, we have issues. So guys, what did you learn? Question, what did you learn today? Did what I show make sense? Did it seem logical, coherent, and factual? The evidence is deep. There's plenty of evidence to go around. But buffering badly. Okay, well, nothing I can do about that. There's really... Because everything is looking peachy on this end. Let me have a look. What YouTube's telling me. Yeah, YouTube. Yes, YouTube is saying there is a stream health problem. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah. Okay, guys, let me end this here. Let me call it a night. So it's not much I can do. The stream status is showing there's an error. That's my internet connection, but could be the weather here. So, okay, guys, thank you very much. I hope once it's after the live is done and the video has sorted itself out, things will be better. All right, guys, please drop your comments in the chat later, in the comments. Well, please leave comments later, and I'll see you guys. Good night. God bless.